Welcome to the self-healing revolution where ancient wisdom and modern science meet. I am your host, Paige Pierman, owner of Love Yourself, an Ayurveda and integrative practice based in Louisville, Kentucky, where I do health coaching, retreats, and courses in Ayurveda. It is my pleasure to offer this summit to you through the holiday season so that you can learn more about self-healing. I've brought together a group of guest speakers who will speak on many different topics. We'll cover three areas: biohack your body, master your mind, and elevate your soul. I learned through my own health crisis that it took over a decade of working with many health professionals in many different areas to find the right path that worked for me. But I also gained a lot of knowledge along the way. And I believe that there's not a one and done approach, and that there are many paths to healing, and that healing journey is part of our existence, that it begins from our first breath into our final breath. So it's my hope with this summit that you will be inspired and that you will be invited into maybe new areas of healing that you've not worked with before. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to a colleague and friend of mine, Dr. Gokul, who studied medicine at Oxford University under a Rhodes Scholarship from Zimbabwe and qualified in 1970. He worked in prestigious posts at leading UK teaching hospitals and undertook research under a MRC training fellowship leading to his MD. He was appointed as a consultant physician in renal medicine at Royal Infirmary, Manchester, UK in 1980, and professor of medicine at University of Manchester, working there for 25 years. Being a recognized world authority in his field, he was frequently invited speaker at national and international meetings and a visiting professor to universities worldwide. He has written 270 peer-reviewed articles and journals and 30 plus chapters in the leading medical textbooks. His focus now is on spirituality, complementary and alternative medicine for healthcare and well-being based on ancient wisdom. He follows and practices Ayurveda, energy frequency healing, microcurrent acupressure, and foot reflexology. Dr. Gokul, it is my pleasure to welcome you on the summit today.
Paige, thank you ever so much for having me on the summit. It's a real pleasure, and I thank you for inviting me to be part of this. It's a great undertaking, and I know that this sort of exposition and summit knowledge exposes people and to rethink about what they are all about, and to refocus. You know, we're going through hellish times in the last several years, and so this is a time when we need to refocus, put our intention right, become aware of who we are. And that is what I always start off by saying. My intention is, for this particular 1 hour or so, is to impart whatever knowledge I have, so that the others who are listening to this now or later will be able to draw some benefit and information to enhance their own lives. I have nothing to gain other than to give, and you know, to do things with total awareness.
Love this. Total awareness.
Where you put your awareness or attention is where you put your energy. That's the most fundamental principles. I mean, you do yoga, I do yoga as well. And, you know, if you're doing a yoga asana, a posture, and you stretch and you put your focus on that area which is difficult or painful, and you breathe out through that area and you release. So intention and awareness, to me, is primary to whatever we do.
Yes, I love that you said that, intention awareness, and that this is a gift. Like we're really coming at this from the perspective of sharing information so that others can receive just the knowledge, the wisdom. And this is a deep, deep wisdom that we're about to dive in together. And so would you share with people, I invited you on the summit for multiple reasons. I invited you because one, you grew up with this in your heart and soul. I invited you on the summit too, because you've spent your career in conventional medicine. So you have deep wisdom of translating what makes Ayurveda unique. And also I can tell that it's in your being. You live and breathe it. So share with our listeners just how this journey has evolved for you.
It's been interesting. As you say, I was brought up in a traditional Hindu upbringing in Africa. I was born there from Hindu parents and a community. It was more a strict religious upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
But that did not answer my question. I really did want to help and heal. And so ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a doctor, which is what I became. It was a struggle. And initially, being a doctor in the UK, it was okay because things weren't bad. You could still care for patients in a very traditional, caring way. Now, the care has gone out of caring.
Can you explain what changed, what shifted from when you started practicing traditional medicine? And when we say traditional, it is more modern, right? But what shifted during your career? What did you see happen that changed that?
I just started seeing the control mechanisms coming in all the time, which were increasing exponentially. And this is in the UK, it's a government-based National Health Service. There was restrictions being imposed, regulations, etc., etc. It became very difficult. The pharmaceutical arm became extremely strong. I remember when I was a medical student, you could get away by just prescribing 20 medications. That is it. Now we have, I don't know, 200,000 or more. I mean, it's just impossible. This became so difficult. And it was very difficult to practice medicine the way I felt I needed to. And so, when time came, I retired. And it was like people didn't quite understand that you could just hold a patient's hand and say, Mrs. Jones, don't worry, things are going to be okay. It is that little spark that goes into the patient, changes her belief system. It's all about beliefs, and changes the energy makeup, and they start healing. So I have seen people that heal who I thought were not going to be around tomorrow. And yet there were others who I thought would be going home, have passed on. So it was getting increasingly difficult to practice what I felt was traditional medical practices. It was getting more and more difficult. Nowadays, when I see what is going on in hospitals and things, I recognize that it is extremely difficult, even though doctors may be well-meaning.
Right. And I think what I've experienced as an Ayurvedic practitioner is most people tell me when they come to an assessment where they have 2 hours with me, is that they'll go into a doctor's office and they're lucky if they even have 5 minutes with the doctor. And I always wonder, how can they even know how to get to the heart of the matter in 5 minutes with somebody whose mind, body, and spirit is so complex, their work environment, their relationship environment, their financial economic status, the other symptoms that are happening within their body, their mindset, their feelings around healing. Like in 5 minutes, a diagnosis is given or testing is ordered, and yet this person is still left with this whole part of them, this multidimensional being that's trying to ascertain what's even happening for themselves.
Well, that has been the problem with modern allopathic medicine. It is not a disease or health-related phenomenon anymore. It's a symptom treatment phenomena run by pharmaceuticals, government policies, finance, and that is ruining healthcare. And it's becoming more and more expensive, more and more difficulty. And I speak to medical colleagues, although I don't have a practice, but these medical colleagues are saying the same thing. They're saying it's extremely difficult to practice genuine, caring medicine. Whether you have to do it as an emergency or not, it's very difficult.
I've found that when people come to Ayurveda, a few things, like they found that they had a symptom and they were given a pharmaceutical, and then there was a side effect, and then maybe they started having gut-based issues, and then there was another symptom, and then the symptoms just kept piling up until they're either like on their knees praying and suffering, like, what is next for me? Or they're already on the healing journey and they're realizing or awakening to the fact that there's more out there than meets the eye, and they're starting to open up to other possibilities. And so, so can you share when you started witnessing how the quality of care was decreasing, how that changed your perspective, or how you began to contend with this?
It was really difficult. I had to have a tussle at night, so busy doing family stuff, research, travel, and all the rest, and the clinical care. But it became very difficult. And I used to pray for my patients at night, because that's the only thing I could do under this mountain and a barrage of what I would call insults that were being imparted. And I'm not saying I'm the holier than thou. I had to practice that for my family's survival and all the rest of it. But I saw it. And when I was, for instance, leaving and retiring, I spoke to the medical faculty at the University of Manchester, you know, lots of the top guys there.
Yeah.
And I just said, listen, this practice that is now emerging in a big way is in fact deleterious. And I give examples of just simple things like breathing, natural, being in nature, Ayurveda, being in natural rhythms, homeopathy.
Right.
And you know what the answer was from the dean of the faculty? He said, Dr. Gokul, I'm glad you are retiring because you are gone soft in the head. That's the philosophy that prevails nowadays.
And with that being said, you said that's the philosophy. And with that being the philosophy, I believe, and this is why I'm doing this summit, the Self-Healing Revolution Summit, is that conventional model has become the overarching way of healing, because that's only what insurance companies will cover. So if someone wants to go into natural healing, they really have to find it within their own resources to start that journey, because it's not being supported through insurance companies. It's not, it's something that they have to have trust and faith that this natural healing world will work for them, especially when they're dealing with major symptoms of some kind. Then the fear is, if I leave conventional, and I'm not asking anyone in the summit to leave conventional medicine, but I've had conversations of how can we help people trust and know that this is a healing path that can be preventative, and as well as bring some homeostasis to the body, even if you still have a diagnosable condition, that this will enhance your life in a way by breath work, by being in nature, by eating pure foods, that it may not necessarily cure a serious condition, which, you know, under miracles and true, that can happen. Yet I want to, with this summit, help create a level of trust but also not only create a level of trust that natural healing is possible, but also it doesn't have to be expensive. Asana doesn't cost anything if you begin to know how to move your body. The breath doesn't cost anything. Having water that you filter, that, we've had somebody talk about structured water on the summit, or earthing, or putting your feet in the dirt. All of these things may seem outside of someone's capacity to know or learn if they've never done it. But much of our healing, even energetic, can be done, like you said, just changing our mindset and having a pathway for doing that.
That's right. I mean, I remember I coined a syndrome, and it's called the DITM syndrome. And DITM means do it to me syndrome. And so people nowadays just go up to the current health system and say, do it to me. They give their power away. The moment you give your power away, you're open to anything. Sometimes healing, but predominantly it's, I call it inverted commas, abuse to your body, because you're treating symptoms, and one symptom leads, medication leads to others, toxic side effects, etc., etc. And so it's all about developing a trust and belief in yourself. You see, the Almighty created us, all right? I think we all believe that there is a creator, a source, a consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, that created us. And it's a phenomenal body. I've done so much research. For instance, in every cell, there are about 100,000 reactions, chemical reactions going on every second. And that happens in the 70, 80 trillion cells. Who's running all this? Who's, coordinating that? And so it's a matter of taking your power back. And the Almighty has provided us with means so that if we get out of the way, the body heals itself. We may need to help it, but the body has the capacity to heal itself. And God created us that way. And so the things you mentioned, like Ayurveda, natural good diet, sunshine is the biggest thing. My God, if there's one thing I would say to people, have sunshine, grounding, walking, being in nature, breathing, meditation, prayer. That's the recipe that the Almighty has given us to say you can put things right. Of course, there's the other aspect of karma and reincarnation and all the rest of it, that we are born here to go through our karmic obligations, etc. That's another field and chapter altogether. We can talk about that all day. But this is important, that if you give your power away to somebody and then you cannot heal yourself or use the natural attributes that the Creator has given to you. And when you do that, that's, it's down the rabbit hole and down the hill. And I have seen this again and again.
Yes, there's a YouTube video that you sent me when we began engaging about the summit, and you started out speaking about it is our God-given right to be healthy. It is our God-given right to learn how to be healthy, and that we don't, there is suffering, but it doesn't mean that we have to suffer. Suffering, the Buddhist is like, suffering is a part of life. And yet Ayurveda gives us this path to teach us how to not suffer. It's available to us if we want to step into empowering ourselves and being sovereign beings. Then, like you said, the power lies within. And I think we've been taught that the power is outside of ourselves. And what makes Ayurveda such a beautiful science is that it empowers the individual to step into their own energetic blueprint, their own energetic body. They get to understand how they move and groove and why they function the way they function. And I don't know of any other system that empowers someone to really understand their energetic blueprint the way that Ayurveda does.
Absolutely. I mean, in physical terms, or more so, the body needs air, water, food. That's the intake for our energy.
Mhm.
It also has to remove waste products. We call that detox.
Mhm.
And in order for the human body to remain pure, P-U-R-E, you have to use the 4 means of excretion of waste products. P for perspiration, U for urination, R for respiration, and E for fecal
Elimination.
excretion.
Mhm.
On top of that, we also have to have a balance between the intake and output. We also have to look after our sleep. We have to look after sex life and exercise. But most important of all, the regime that yoga and Ayurveda and other ancient disciplines impart is that we have to quieten the mind. Now, if you don't quieten the mind, the ego mind, and get into the subconscious, then we're into real trouble, because we're just then scratching at the surface and not getting to the real deep self. And that happens through meditation, to breathing, to grounding, and all the disciplines that we've already talked about and mentioned. That's the basis of yoga and Ayurveda. And sunshine and being in nature. We now live in concrete jungles, urbanized areas, and the diseases are just shooting through the roof, especially in urban areas.
Right. So when we started talking about not disconnecting from the self, but empowering ourselves, we're not giving our power away. The other component of that that's really coming out strong in the summit is that not only did we disconnect from ourselves and give our power away, but we've disconnected from nature's rhythms. We've disconnected from nature herself.
Yeah.
And when we reconnect with nature and we reconnect with nature's rhythms, then immediately our body will fall into homeostasis because we're honoring nature. It's disease when we go against nature because it has its own force. It has a way, a rhythm. It has a cycle. And if we go outside of that, I mean, I'll give an example. I have a client who has PCOS, and we just synced up her circadian rhythms, and she went from having 90 plus day cycles down to, she wasn't having a cycle for over 90 days, down to it's regulating to what a normal cycle would look like within just a few months' time. And yet, she was going to conventional medicine. They wanted to put her on pharmaceuticals. And really it just took, connecting her with nature, doing asana with her, mindfulness practices, connecting with the circadian rhythm, and the body will find, when you begin to honor nature, you honor yourself first. When you begin to honor nature and nature's rhythms with your body, homeostasis will ensue, right?
The English language is a funny language, but when you look at words like nature, the anagram of the word nature is a tuner. Nature is a tuner to who you really are. It's the same thing with earth. You see, when we talk about the earth, the anagram for earth is heart. So you just change the words around, and by connecting to the power of the earth, we strengthen the power of our heart. These are all interconnected and balance. And if you can restore balance within our systems, and I'm very keen on doing heart-brain coherence, for instance. That's so powerful. And using all the means available to us, frequencies, energy, sound healing, I mean, these are phenomenal gifts. And if we choose to give our power away and live in the past, which is history, or live in the future, which is a mystery, we miss the real important moment of now. And that moment is a gift. And that's why it's called a present. So, to me, you have to be conscious all the time. And how do you achieve consciousness? Being who you are. You see, the mind, the body is amazing. We are living our life 5% of the time in the conscious mode. So in my conscious mode, I say, I'm going to achieve this, that, and the other. But 95% of the time, your hard disk, which is your subconscious, takes over. It runs everything. And the hard disk, the subconscious mind, is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the conscious. And so the subconscious mind rules the roost. And you have to find mechanisms whereby you can get into the subconscious, which in fact holds all the issues that you have evolved, especially over the first 6-8 years of life. You were born with a kingdom, a castle of 1,000 rooms, which had beauty, which had excitement, awe. Everything was great. And suddenly you were told, no, don't do that. No, you have to change. Suddenly all these 1,000 rooms started closing down until you were left with just one crummy room. And that's what happens. That 6 to 8 year period is so fundamental, where you get fragmentation, where your external, internal forces then start controlling you and setting the cycle. And that is so vital to be able to overcome through the techniques that we have. Now, I tell you, it ain't easy. I'm battling myself. I'm not reached nirvana or moksha, as they say, or enlightenment. This is my life's journey. And I want to share my experiences with others who can benefit. That it's not an easy ride. It's easy in theory, but it's tough because your mind is so strong. And of course, the external and internal influences, especially stress and all the stuff that we have, they actually cause issues and problems. And that science is called epigenetics. Mm-hmm. It influences your genes and everything else. Mm-hmm. And so when they say your issues are in your subconscious, well, I've coined a thing called your issues are in your tissues. They get embedded in the body. Mm-hmm. You have to release them.
Yeah. And what's beautiful about Ayurveda, when we see that the issues are in our tissues, you were talking about an aspect of Ayurveda is purification of the physical, emotional, and spiritual body. And that detox or purification process, when we begin to clear out the gunk in our tissues, interestingly enough, when people go through an Ayurvedic cleanse or Panchakarma experience or a detoxification process, whatever is lying in the tissues begins to get undone, if you will, because it's hiding there and it has a place to like a host, it's got a host taking care of it in our tissues. But then you start to do this physical purification, and then the energetic body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, the psychological body begins to go through a process as well. And I think sometimes when people come to Ayurveda, they think that it's more just a physical medical system. And yet what happens is when people begin to, like you said, the reason it's not an easy process is because that stuff wants to be held there. It wants to like harbor itself. It wants a home. The pain body wants to be in the pain body.
Yeah.
And when we begin to purify ourselves physically, then, you know, whether we do it through asana or we do it through breath or we do it, you know, through walking or connecting in nature, then all of a sudden that stuff begins to come out of its hiding place. And then there's something that we have to contend with, that we have to work with. And that's not something that you can do just once. I had a client, he said, when am I going to be done with this mantra? And I said, you may be doing this mantra your whole life. Why do you want to have an end goal? Why do you think that that you're just going to be fixed in like 1 week of doing mantra? You know, because something could be embedded in you so deep, you know, that it's the journey, you know, it's the journey of identifying and releasing and purifying yourself. But that doesn't come lightly. It doesn't come without some effort. It doesn't come without some work. And that's why, you know, Ayurveda is the science of life. It's not that you did it 1 week and you've arrived and you're cured, because each passing breath, like you said, the present moment, each passing breath is a new moment.
Yeah.
It's a new opportunity. It's a new place to experience experientially. And it's with every single breath that we take.
Well, it's you know, breathing and grounding and meditation, etc. These are all techniques, fundamental. They go back in all ancient traditions. They go back thousands and thousands of years. And when we look at, say, creation, the source, and what that is, Ayurveda said at the beginning there was nothing, and then, or Vedas say, and then God, or whoever you want to call it, said, I need to propagate, had a thought through the higher mind. And the thing that came through, that she promoted this creation, was sound. So sound came first as a vibration, as a frequency, even before light. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I'm very keen on sound. For instance, Om, you're familiar with it, our speakers will be too. Om is a primordial sound at the beginning. It's interesting that the rishis, ancient seers and rishis, felt that Om resonated at the frequency of 7.8 hertz. That's the earth frequency, called the Schumann resonance. So if you align with nature and speak the sound of Om, then you are taking that divine energy from above down into yourself and trying to change things to bring it back into balance. And that's why I always reckon Om is in the home. Our journey home has to do a lot with all the things we're talking, but also sound therapy. It's amazing sound. And I tell you one thing about sound. I come from Africa, okay? Zimbabwe and South Africa I visited, and there's a special area in Zimbabwe called the Zimbabwe ruins. Okay,
yes.
Ancient thing there. I don't know how old they are. And Michael Tellinger and Osmanovich have looked at these Adam's Circle, etc. And
yeah, I just learned about Adam's Circle this past week. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. So they've looked at it and they have identified that ancient civilizations, Anunnaki, ET, use these devices, which were sound-related energy devices that they use for mining gold. Southern Africa, rich of gold. Yeah. Okay, I don't know whether that is so or not, but one of the things about these Adam's Circle and Zimbabwe ruins, that at the base of them, especially the big tomb, they have recorded the highest level of negative ion concentration in the world.
Yeah.
Now, people sit there and just heal. I've not did that. I have visited them, but it's amazing. So this ancient science is coming to fruition now.
Yeah. And exactly what you said. I actually just watched the Tellinger on Adam's Circle. And one of the things that happens when you're in the field, it's like a vortex. The temperature changes and cell phone reception doesn't even work in there. I wanted to go back to what you said about Om and the frequency of the earth. When our body or our electromagnetic field is not the same frequency of the earth, then we're diseased. So it would make complete sense, right? If your frequency is not at the same frequency of the earth, that then you could receive. I mean, it is scientific, and people don't necessarily know that it's scientific to just connect with nature herself, and the biofields of nature will heal you. And what's beautiful about that, when you talk about sound, is what I tell people is by doing mantra or by doing these seed sounds, we create our own tuning fork for our own body. The tuning fork resides within our own self. We have that capacity to vibrationally help heal ourselves through sound itself. And I love that you've touched upon this, because as I've gone deeper and deeper into studying Ayurveda, I have begun to see how profound that frequency of sound is. And if you think about it, every thought has a vibrational frequency with it, whether it's spoken or unspoken. And everything that we say has a frequency, it has a vibration, it has like you said, these words that you mentioned, we understand at our essence what they mean. We know what presence means. We know, but yet we lose sight. We intuitively know.
And it's about being conscious all the time. For instance, Om, there's a symbol of Om, but it's written OM, Now it's important. When you recite Om in that sense, we have three physical cavities in ourselves. The lower one, you start by saying the middle one, ooh, and the that's the humming sound. You prolong that for as long as you possibly can, and what that does is it vibrates the vital organs within the brain. And the key one are pituitary, hypothalamus, pineal, and of course the frontal lobes. So what that does is it generates the hypothalamus and pituitary to release hormones that balances things out. The pineal vibrates, the crystals vibrate as well, and of course you change serotonin to melatonin. And then you get other substances as you do more, and we can talk about that. So, the humming is important, and it doesn't take much. You calm down straight away when you have sound. Now, of course, music, because I love singing as well, and music, the solfeggio notes, for instance, are set up. That's a 6-note scale. Ancient, and the Gregorian, not the Gregorian, but the scale that was used in the Bible, etc., all use the Solfeggian frequency. And the one that is really good is the 528 frequency, which is the heart. So the heart frequency and vibration is vital to our existence. It's in Vedas, it says it's all about the heart. And if it is about the heart, we have to get that right. Now, you see, we have 7 or 8 chakras, and the lower 3 chakras are survival. They are procreation, digestive, etc., etc. You see, and they hold the lower emotions, lust, greed, anger, all these things.
More the reptilian brain.
Reptilian brain. So when you have to move up, move that energy from the base, the Kundalini, up to the heart. Once you get to the heart, it can only move one way, up. So the heart is all about. Now it's recognized that there are special nerve fibers, 40 odd or so, from the heart, like a mini brain, that in fact sends 9 times more messages to the brain than the other way around. So the electromagnetic force created by the heart is really powerful. And we have to achieve coherence between heart and brain in order to lift all these things up, to get the prefrontal lobes, for instance, to release GABA, which quietens down the reptilian brain. And one of the things, which is the key area in neuroanatomy, and the seers and sages knew about, is the 3rd ventricle. It's called Brahma's cave. Brahma is the supreme. It's got, why is it? Because everything is there. Your corpus callosum, your pineal, your pituitary, your thalamus, your hippocampus, all these things are there. And then you have the frontal lobes, which release GABA, which quietens down the thing. So some of the breathing exercises you can do to quieten your brain is like prolonged exhalation and so forth. So these are all things that people need to come to terms with and practice. And sound is really so important, the solfeggio. Now, just as sound can heal, it has to be good, coherent sound, like the ancient Indian ragas, the classical music.
Can you explain what distinguishes that so that people who've never heard this before understand the difference?
Well, these are frequencies which are coherent, which are elevated frequencies, which are for heart-based would be love, joy, compassion,
gratitude.
And so if you are living in a survival mode, which a lot of our people are down below, well, then you're into this nitty-gritty fight, stress, this, that, and the other. So the higher frequencies from the heart are so important. And that means that the higher frequencies of joy, etc., then stimulate the chemical cascade in the brain to pour out things that will manifest calm, will balance, and start the healing process. But, you know, to start the healing process, you have to get out of the way. You cannot be eating junk food all the time. You cannot be in a pool of EMFs, bad frequencies, or listening to junk sound like, I don't know, I don't even know what the name is, but rock, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
Can you, I want to backtrack just a little bit. I still want you to talk about the frequency of sound and why it differs, why the sound frequency differs and the vibrational frequency is higher versus a lower vibration.
Well, the lower vibration, the frequencies are very slow. So if you know what a sine wave is, its lower frequencies like lust, anger, greed are very, very low in frequency. And that does not heal. But the higher you go up in frequency at the heart, or even at the level of the creator, those sine waves are so, the frequency is so rapid.
They're rapid and condensed. That's it.
And condensed, and that's it. So
but when we have heart-brain coherence, they sync up.
Oh, yes.
The frequencies sync. That's really what heart-brain coherence is when the two frequencies sync up together and they become united. And what I was just listening to a heart documentary on Gaia, and it said one of the longest journeys most of humanity will ever make is the journey from the head to the heart. But it doesn't have to be the longest journey.
But it's the other way around. It's from the heart to the brain. That's the journey.
Right. But the problem is most people get...
And the distance between the two is only 18 inches. It's not like you're having to travel 10,000 kilometers, you know?
Yeah.
18 inches is what separates the heart from the brain.
Right. It's that ability to... The electromagnetic field of the heart is 2,000 times greater than the mind. And yet it's the mind that we're allowing to dominate and rule. And yet this frequency, this vibration is far more capable and profound and able to bring harmony and peace and joy and healing powers.
So, I mean, there is a simple technique in Ayurveda where you can bring about this quite easily. It's called Atma Bodh Mudra, which is placing your hands together over the heart in a namaste or whatever. And then you breathe in through the heart and breathe out through the heart. You close your eyes. When you put your hands there, the heart feels safe. Ah, it goes ah. And then you breathe in and out through the heart. The heart, the breathing rate will naturally slow down. And if you can do that for 3 minutes with a feeling of gratitude. Now, gratitude is the highest state of receivership. Now, that has a very high frequency. So if you are grateful, it means that something has already happened. You are already in receipt because you are grateful. And giving, being gratitude, generates your compassion and your love. It's all about love at the end of the day. And so that breathing then for 3 minutes gets you into coherence so that your brain waves then go from the beta, high beta, down to alpha, down to delta. And if you are lucky enough and able to do this with practice and persistence and perseverance, those 3 P's are very important. Then you can get into your brainwave activity, gamma. That's a blowout. And I know Joe Dispenza talks about this. Yeah. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, I think there's this idea in humanity that it's not attainable or that like you have to be a guru or that you have to be, but Dr. Joe Dispenza has like blown that out of the water. You don't have to spend your entire life being a guru sitting on a rock out, you know, in the forest away from humanity to get to these higher states of consciousness.
Absolutely. You want to ascend while in this life. You know, you don't have
to live hundreds and hundreds of lives to...
Yes, you cannot go and hide yourself in a cave in the Himalayas and think you will achieve nirvana. Not on. I can tell you that. And a guru, I don't want to go into that topic of guru because I have some real vested interest, not interest, but experiences. You are your own guru.
Your own guru. But Ayurveda says that the divine healer resides within.
That's right. It's called in Ayurveda and San, it's called Upaguru, the higher self, the Soham, I am.
I am that I am.
One of the fundamental questions that one of the Upanishads asks, this is key. He says, what is it by knowing which everything is known? What is it by knowing which everything is known? And it gives a bit of a commentary. And then it says, know thyself. And that's the answer. If you know who you really are, that will lead to an answer to the journey. It's all there within your heart and body. It's there. You are born with it. You just have to realign, because our 5 senses that we are born with have created in this 3-dimension area a sense of separation, that we are cut off. But we are not. We are part of this field. We are part of this Akashic field, whatever you want to call it. And we are in this body, in a true sense, it's like Maya or illusion, they call it, right? Now, I'm not going to go there. The issue is that we have the capacity to be able to reach that in this lifetime, and fulfilling our needs, family, and responsibilities in this life at home or work. But we have to be fully conscious. And the only way I know that one can be fully conscious is through the breath. Now, there is a sonnet that I'm not going to recite it in the from the Vedas and Hindu religion, which says, this life is like a flash of lightning. And in that flash, which is just, what, a second or so, you have to thread the eye of the needle, or put a thread through a pearl. Before you know, you would be gone. But you will have wasted 21,600 opportunities. Now, this is written 5,000-10,000 years ago. What is 21,600? It's the number of breaths you take in a day.
Oh, in a day,
so
okay.
This is the means whereby you breathe in and out through your nose, focus on that, and it immediately brings you back into focus. If you are stressed out, few deep breaths in and out, observing your breath, or you can cross your eyes and look up there. And so these are means that are available to us to really be conscious. Otherwise, before you know, it's time, and the soul is sitting there, and there's the mind and the body, and the soul says, God, I'm so tired. I've had enough. This chap ain't going to shift. It's time to recycle. Now, I'm putting this very crudely, but that's how it happens. And people recycle, and the Almighty says, okay, you better sign another contract because you didn't fulfill the last X number of carnations that you've had. And so that sums up to me what it's all about.
Yeah, it's with each breath as a gift. I mean, you were talking about the present. It's the gift that's given with each breath. Each breath, we're here again, and we're renewed, and we have this ability to experience our oneness, our wholeness.
The entire universe is breathing, so it expands, contracts. The fundamental field, the energy field, is called a toroid. The toroid is an anu in Sanskrit, is the most fundamental of all particles, from which the pranic energy, chi energy, etc. So the sciences of pranayama, qigong, etc. are all based on energy flows through the body, through the chakras or the acupressure points. And when there are blockages, that's where you start getting problems. And so breathing, exercise, yogasanas, qigong movements, you know, that beautiful movement with intention and awareness. And it's not going to happen overnight, as you said. It takes months, years to achieve that level where you can heal yourself. And that takes sometimes a long time to release those subconscious blockages. And you have to use a level of energy and a level to actually move from matter to energy, to shift in the ascension process.
I want to say that when we're speaking of prana or life force and its blockages, a lot of what, you know, I'll ask people when they begin to work with me, you know, I'll say, like, when they'll talk about their disease or they'll talk about what's happening, I'll say, where do you feel it in your body? And most of the time, whether it be their heart or their throat or their stomach or their shoulders or the neck, that's where the prana or the chi is blocked. And as soon as they begin to realize that they can take their prana or their attention or their life force there, they can begin to heal. And it might blow people's minds that through the breath alone, or like you were saying, even sound vibration, but just by becoming conscious of the breath and becoming conscious of where prana is or where life force is moving in your body or how it's stuck, you can free up. Like you said, there can be a lot of trapped issues, or those issues in our tissues can get trapped and lodged in a place that's become disharmonious, but it doesn't have to stay disharmonious. It doesn't have to reside there forever. And, you know, there's a process that I found when we're going through a detoxification or purification process. If it comes too fast, we have to have the digestion, the ama, the fire to be able to burn through. It can be tejas. It doesn't have to be like just digestive fire. But if we are trying to digest experiences quicker than the energetic body can hold or retain, that's why it takes time, because you haven't developed what we call in Ayurveda prana, tejas, and ojas. If you don't have strong ojas and you don't have strong tejas, and you try to go through some level of purification, you may run up against a problem because you haven't properly prepared the container, the energetic container of the body.
You mentioned ojas, which is that life force energy, the belly fire, etc. Now, there's been a lot of debate about trying to find the molecule that describes ojas.
In the heart, resides within the heart.
Ojas equals melatonin. A lot of work done on that. When you look at the characteristics of what ojas does, and you look at what melatonin does, identical. There are research papers on that. And it's important that one recognizes the importance of the oldest hormone molecule that the humans have, and that's melatonin. And that's also related to pineal activation. But people don't realize that our own cells, every cell has mitochondria, which in sunlight can release melatonin. So important, vital for the energy cascade, the electron transport in the cells, cell membrane, etc., etc. That and the toroids that are set up. You see, the heart is the biggest toroid around. Everything goes in, and once you get coherent, and it opens up the field, then your field goes from top down, whereas from up bottom. So you have a two-way system going, right? And when that opens up, you know, there is no end to the awe, the magnificence, etc. that goes on, and these moments, the little glimpses, I've had some of these, they are so powerful. And the beauty is that can you prolong your meditative experiences, your various things you do throughout the day. You cannot just be meditative for half an hour or 2 hours in the morning or evening, and then the rest of the time you switch back to all your past issues and stress and everything else. Because that door opening from the hippocampus and the thalamus, the thalamic gate opens up through the pineal, etc., just shuts down. It can't take going back to the past and the stress and everything else. So there's so much one can talk about in this area, which is so exciting, and so much science that is coming out that verifies these ancient traditions. And I think you and I are both excited by this emergence of new knowledge, of new evidence, because now science is the sort of the modern, it's the language of modern mysticism. Now, the ancient rishis and gurus and things, they did not have a laboratory to work out all the hormone changes, the DNA, the mRNA, cell biology, etc., etc. They just knew inherently. They just knew it. And they wrote about it in the Vedas, Upanishads, and all the other ancient texts. They just know it. For instance, if you stimulate the pineal gland, you release these vasoactive, beautiful substances, including DMT, dimethyltryptamine. That's the ayahuasca. You don't have to go to the shamanic to release DMT. You have the capacity and ability to do so.
Yeah. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to kind of come full circle a little bit because we've touched upon a lot of things. I do want to say, with regards to prana, tejas, and ojas, or what we were just talking about, is we can give it a physical, chemical process that we can define within our physical anatomy. In Ayurveda, though, they were the most subtle essences, these refined essences of our being. And it's also, part of the science as well, is that we like to try to physically define what's happening on a biochemical process, but yet these essences that we're talking about are the most subtle and the most refined. And so they have a mirror, a way that they translate within the physical form, but yet they are subtle essences, if you will. I've so appreciated this. I hope that this conversation inspires people to realize that healing is within their own hands. It is attainable, and that they can begin to empower themselves by knowing that they don't have to give their power away. They don't have to succumb to something that is outside of themselves. So is there anything you'd like to end with before we end today that you really want people to take home?
Yeah, I just wanted to end that this separateness that is created by the five senses is something that we have to get. We are the field. We are part of the Akashic field, the consciousness. We are it. But it's like a drop of water, and asks another drop of water, what's the ocean like? And get this answer, that. But you never really know until that drop hits and becomes the ocean. That's the journey that we have to face. And we are all part of this oneness. There is a Vedic mantra from one of the Upanishads, which is really, it's a peace chant. And it says, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. So it says, this is whole, perfect, complete. That is whole, complete. And from wholeness, perfection, emerges wholeness. Wholeness coming from wholeness, wholeness still remains. And all is one, that we are part of the divine. And if we are part of the whole and part of the divine, then the whole or the divine must be part of us. Mm-hmm. It's such a profound mantra. And so the vision, the Vedic vision, is that the universe is a totality, indivisible and organic whole. The parts are not separate. We are all in it, in a togetherness, interlinked, connected. So even a blade of grass is linked to the greatest sun and no less significant. And the part represents the whole. And we have to recognize that we are not separate. We are part of the whole. And bring ourselves back into alignment of who we really are. If we know who we are, then this journey begins.
As soon as we begin to fragment ourselves is when suffering ensues. Thank you. I think that's a beautiful way to end. Thank you for sharing that mantra. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I should have sung it, you know. It's okay. Yeah. But that's it. So I will conclude there. We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope it's given all the listeners food for thought about doing their own research, knowledge base, and journey. And I bless them all.
Dr. Gokul, where are you in your path with sharing Ayurveda?
Well, I'm there. I share it wherever I can. Mm-hmm. You see, nowadays it's a real battle. Mm-hmm. People want a quick fix. I say to them, there ain't a quick fix. You have to persevere. You have to be patient and carry on, but focus on the simple things. You don't have to do something so complex and change your life overnight. One step at a time does it. And when you do that, the next step comes along. Yes. And the doors open.
Yes. Well, I would like to invite you to join me in my platform in the Alchemy and Art of Loving Yourself, my year-long course to be a guide and teacher for people. Thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
You're very welcome. I've really enjoyed having this exchange as part of the summit, and I wish the summit all the very best.
Thank you.